An anime movie about making an anime movie. Genius idea. Shirobako the movie is a film sequel to the anime series Shirobako. The series follows a group of high school friends who all work to find their own place in the anime industry. It's an anime about making anime. Because, of course, there's an anime about everything. This movie was released about 5 years after the series. It was just released this week in theaters with English subtitles, but it actually came out last year in February in Japan. Though naturally, because it's been so long since I watched the original, I rewatched the series with its very recent English dub, and it's a really fun time. I've definitely learned a lot more about animation and art since I first watched the show, so I understood a lot more of the references and stuff. Also, the new English dub is really fantastic. All the voices are great, but in particular, I like the director's voice acting a lot. He's an actor I'm not even familiar with, but his performance here was really perfect and hilarious. So if you do check out the original series, I would definitely recommend the dub if you're into those. The series is interesting because it doesn't really serve as an educational piece about the anime industry, like, at all. You might sort of expect it to be like a documentary in a way, but it really isn't. There's a lot more focus on just using the setting of the industry to convey stories about pursuing your dreams and working through the unique conflicts that come with being in production. Which is the exact kind of optimistic writing that I love. Though this does make the series a bit of a tough recommendation, since if you don't really have a slightly above average understanding of animation production, I feel like you might be confused about a lot of the situations and terminologies in the series. They do kind of explain how things work, but they don't really hold your hand enough for you to easily grasp a lot of what's going on sometimes. At least that's how I feel people not too familiar with production would feel. You need to think of it like this isn't an anime documentary, it's more like a slice of life show set in the anime industry. It's really fun, sweet, and interesting, but some of the premises could get a little confusing. Still, it's a great time though. That's my thoughts on the series. Now for this brand new movie. The movie takes place 4 years after the series, and it turns out during that time, the fictional studio the lead character works for, Musashi no Animation, has fallen apart. Most of the staff left to find new roles elsewhere, and the quality of their work and reputation is rapidly declining. To save the studio, and to finally work on something they're passionate about, the crew that's left makes the daring decision to make an original animated movie in just under a year. They work hard to try and get most of their staff back together, and try to release the movie under a new strict time limit. Now, the best part of this movie? There's a cute musical number about anime. It doesn't get better than that. I almost wished after that point the whole movie randomly turned into a full musical. That would have been a lot of fun, and very theatrical. But anyways, right off the bat, this movie definitely has a direction I would not have expected. I always avoid watching trailers before watching anime movies, so I was pretty surprised by this direction. It makes sense considering the time gap, but the way the anime show ended was really optimistic and hopeful. So it's a funny juxtaposition for this movie to immediately start with the studio falling apart. I mean because I was rewatching the show just before watching this movie, I saw everybody so happy and hopeful for the future, and then the movie starts and everything's falling apart. It's funny and it's an interesting direction, but I feel like it goes a little bit against what they were setting up in the show. But it's realistic, I suppose. The whole plot takes that sort of we need to get the band back together type of approach, where throughout the movie we see where the characters from the show ended up, and what they need to be inspired to work for Musashi no again. Plus, of course, this is an anime movie about making an anime movie. It's a genius idea. This is kind of a tangent, but of course this movie was produced before the pandemic happened, but the way the plot is kind of indirectly ties into it. In fact, wouldn't that be an even more interesting direction for a movie? To focus on the way the pandemic affected the anime industry? That could be a cool premise, showing how these fictional artists found fun and inspiration during such a dangerous and lonely time. I kind of want to see that. Though this really doesn't actually have anything to do with the movie. It's just interesting because the movie starts with the studio in shambles, and I did think for a second oh, because of the pandemic? That's interesting. Oh wait, no, this movie came out early last year in Japan, so it was being made in 2018, 2019, so that can't be right. Anyways, back on topic. I must say though, in this movie there's a bit of a lack of focus on seeing the fictional movie's production, at least compared to the way we saw the production of the fictional animes in the original series. The focus on this movie is much more on the character relationships. There are tons of funny moments, but it's missing a bit of that sweet, inspirational vibe that the show had. It's probably just because this is a movie, but in a way I would have preferred this to just play out as a TV season instead. We would have been able to see more that way. I mean, the length of this movie is equal to just 4 episodes of the show, and the show had 24 episodes. it just kind of feels like it's missing some stuff. Like there's a point in the movie where the cast wants to redo a major part of their work, and they have an even tighter deadline. So there's a big scene where they hype up that they're going to put their all into finishing that scene, and then we just cut to the next part that's like a month later where it's all done. We don't get to see the trials or the development. We get to only see the result. And I feel like if this wasn't a movie, if it was the show, we would have definitely seen more of that. Because that's kind of what the show's hook is seeing the journey of their fictional anime projects from start to finish. But in this movie, it definitely feels like it cuts out a lot of the production part. It just focuses more on the characters. It works, but it's not really my preference compared to how the show was. I think if they sped up the exposition of this movie a bit, they could have spent more time focusing on the production aspect. And then still intermittently added characters back into the cast throughout showing that, rather than having a really long section where things were just being put back together and they were even deciding to make the movie. Like, I think they should have came up with the plan to produce the movie 10 minutes into this movie. But it took a bit longer than that. There's just kind of a missing feeling of story closure in this movie. It plays out more like a reunion special, so there's some things that I felt like could have been here to make the story feel complete. Because the way it is, I'm left wanting more. And, I mean, more in a good way. I'd love to always have more of this show. But there's just some stuff that I feel like was left off. One of the main goals of the lead character and her friends in the original series was that they hoped to one day make their own anime based on an idea they had in high school. And there's a point in this movie where someone says that she should pitch that idea to the studio and have that be the movie they make. But then she's just kind of apprehensive and doesn't do it, and it doesn't really matter that that line of dialogue was even featured. I feel like for this movie to work better as a conclusion to the series or a continuation, it would have made a lot of sense and been really sweet to see them at least pitch that idea to the studio or use a character from it or something. You know, it doesn't really give closure on that idea. It kind of very briefly feels like it's going to, and then you're like, oh, they're gonna make their anime finally? But then they just don't, and it's like, oh, okay. It just seems weird. Like, again, it's such an obvious thing for the finale of a show like this to do, but they don't do it. And, I mean, it's still fine because I guess they're taking a much more realistic approach to it. Like, it's not like some random producer is just gonna be able to have her perfect anime be made, but still. Even if the movie just ended with them saying that's going to be their next anime, or like she's hoping to finally pitch that idea to somebody, but it doesn't. Anyways, on the topic of this movie's visual direction, really even the animation of this movie is pretty identical to the 6-year-old series. It looks great, but it's not really eye-catching in the way you might expect a theatrical anime movie to be. Like animation-wise, this really does just look exactly like the original show. With that said though, I'm really glad that this movie was released in theaters. Unfortunately, it was just for one night this week, so you probably missed it if you didn't see it already, but a Blu-ray release for the movie is coming soon in October. Never did I expect this series to continue, but I definitely never even expected to be able to sit in a theater and watch it. It was great seeing a classic show on the big screen, and hearing others laugh at the silly moments and stuff. Usually we only get those grand, impressive, artsy, sad anime movies in theaters, so I really appreciate that this seemingly niche and obscure one got a release too. Sadly, this theatrical release wasn't dubbed, but I can understand there was probably time restraints and stuff. But it looks like the Blu-ray release won't be dubbed either. That's odd, but I don't know, maybe there's just a lot of constraints going on right now. Or maybe it's even because of licensing issues. It seems like 2 different Western distributors own this series. One company owns the anime, and now a different company owns this movie. The dub was great though, and it just came out last year, I think. I thought that dub was being made to hype up the movie, but maybe not. I mean, maybe not, especially if that studio doesn't own the movie. But why would they dub an old show and then not do its new movie? Maybe they just will later on, but this is looking a little bit strange to many fans at the moment. Though all that aside, this series is a great time. If you're looking for something sweet and inspirational, especially during times like this series is perfect comfort food. I think if you're an artist especially, you'll really get a lot out of this. Maybe you'll be bothered by how unrealistic and optimistic it can be sometimes, but it's good to watch content like that. I remember screenshots from this show would circulate on Tumblr a lot back in the day, all sorts of moments of inspirational dialogue, and it was really nice seeing all that again. I honestly teared up quite a few times while I was rewatching the show because of how sweet it is. It's just nice seeing characters achieve their tough dreams and working hard together to make others happy. That's what art is to me, so it's great to watch a show convey that. Some of the anime references and terminology may go over your head if you aren't majorly invested in the industry or aren't really an artist yourself, but there's still lots of fun to be had for anyone. Shirobako the movie is a pleasant return to the characters and it's full of fun moments, but it doesn't quite hit the way that the original series did. In fact, it really just leaves me wanting to see even more from this cast. In a good way. So with all that said, I think I would rate the Shirobako anime series as an A-, and I rate this sequel movie as a B. Again, if you're looking for something sweet and inspirational, and you love animation, this series is sure to make you laugh and smile. Have you checked it out before, or are you planning to check it out? Let me know in the comments. And who's your favorite character from the series? There's like a ton of them to choose from. Please leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to know when I post new videos. Thanks for watching, and super special thanks to my Patreon supporters. Support me on Patreon and you'll be able to submit video topics, see exclusive behind the scenes content, and help me keep this channel going. Also follow me on Twitter and TikTok for special updates.